Well, first of all, let me congratulate you, Mr. Robinson, from the team here in Trinidad and Tobago. I think that the question I might ask, are you hearing me over there?
Yes, I'm hearing you quite
Well,
well.
I'm wondering when you're coming across to Trinidad. I think many people want to find that out.
As soon as you have released me, I shall be on my way to Trinidad. In fact, I only stayed in order to give this interview, and it shows that I appreciate TTT.
It is a spirit of celebration of the victory of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. The triumph of the democratic process in Trinidad and Tobago, and the expression of the free spirit of a free people. One God, one people, one love.
He set the tone for the type of government the N.A.R. was. It was a government of integrity. We won the election in 1986 by about April or May of 1987. The N.A.R. government passed into law the Integrity in Public Life Act in order to set up the Integrity Commission. And that was a reflection on how Mr. Robinson and the N.A.R. government felt about the integrity and the need for integrity. The whole country went on a cleanup campaign initiated by the government. He said he sought to inspire people to have pride in their country. You had the YTEP program that was introduced, the youth training program, in order to introduce people for skills and to learn business and so on. The port of Tobago was restructured, and also the airport. So those were two things that Mr. Robinson worked on very feverishly in order to boost the economy. In 1989, Mr. Robinson is the one who introduced to CARICOM the idea of the Caribbean Court of Justice. He was of the view that if we are an independent people, we can't have the English deciding for us on matters. We have to take our matters into our own hands, and we have to decide for ourselves. And then internationally, as we all know, Mr. Robinson was responsible in the main for the introduction of the International Criminal Court of the United Nations. We went through 5 years without there being the slightest smear of corruption. When we first went into government, we found, it's a cliche now, an empty treasury. Things were bad. The experts brought to Mr. Robinson two alternatives. One, we fire 15,000 public servants. Or we stop paying the COLA and reduce those public servants in office, reduce their salaries by 10%.
A decision was taken to cut COLA, cost of living allowances, reduce salaries. The public service is not easy to touch. That was the environment, that was the context in which 1990 attempted coup occurred. Massive dissatisfaction with the government, people who could not wait for almost the next election because they were so unhappy with their government.
By 1990, when you had the attempted coup and Robinson faced his darkest hour, facing the guns of the Muslimin inside of the parliament.
When they called on him to tell the army to put down their arms, and again, putting country first, Mr. Robinson's response was attack with full force.
Attack with full force.
And that is when he was shot in his leg. So, I mean, there can be no greater show of patriotism and bravery than what Mr. Robinson did under pressure, under a gun, under several guns.
We were fortunate to have a scholarly Prime Minister with a scholarly wife.
Mr. Robinson had two children, David and Anne Margaret. For most of Robinson's time in office, his son lived abroad in Montreal, so we didn't see very much of David. And Margaret was a quiet person, and she herself had a daughter, Anushka, who was Mr. Robinson's eyeball.
I was his only grandchild, and he was very, very excited to have a grandchild. So I was his partner in crime with a lot of things. Mommy would always tell stories of how grandpa always used to look out for me, how he used to take care of me. My grandfather, he was always like a very, very big family man. He would always look out for me, my mother, my grandmother. He'd always be asking after his son, David, who lived in Canada. He always wanted to see him. He always had this very strong connection to his family, which he got from his parents, because from when he was a young boy, his parents always taught him to, look out for your family, look out for your community, look out for the people around you. But my grandfather was always, he was a Tobago man. His family was in Tobago. Of course, he eventually became MP for Tobago. So he would always be between the two. And even when he was in Tobago, he would always be kind of between Scarborough and Castara, because Castara is where he was born in Mason Hall. He mostly grew up in Castara, and he went to secondary school, and we have the family home in Castara as well as in Scarborough. And some of my relatives still live in Scarborough to this day in the old family home. He became like first in the Caribbean and Latin and geography though. Like he would remember stuff he had studied when he was 10, 11, 12, he could recite it perfectly. After he left Bishop's, he worked for a while in the civil service, and he did a correspondence degree. And he eventually got a scholarship to go, so he went to London after to finish his correspondence degree. And then he went to Oxford, where he studied politics, philosophy, and economics. And he always said that, he always recounted to me his goal when he was studying was to get either a first-class degree or a good second-class honors degree. So he graduated with a good second-class honors degree from Oxford. Clever, kind, and with a spark of mischief. My grandfather had tremendous faith in this country. I lived with my grandfather pretty much my whole life, but I never saw him as like Prime Minister A.N.R Robinson. I see him, as A.N.R the man rather than A.N.R the statesman most of the time. Even though I experienced him in his political life, he was always like my grandfather to me.
He's the only person in my life's experience that I was comfortable referring to as my boss. That is the level of the respect that I had for him. Not that he was a perfect man, he was a complex individual, but I was satisfied of his commitment to the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
I would like to be remembered as a leader who was prepared to sacrifice his life for the benefit of his country.